Hello learners, and welcome to today's lesson on interpreting graphs. Now let's start off our lesson on a did you know. Did you know that graphs can tell a story? Yes, every graph has a story behind it. For example, the graph below shows the number of textbooks received per grade at a certain school. Number of textbooks per grade at Bunene Secondary Schools. As we can see there, we have on the left-hand side the number of textbooks, and right at the bottom, horizontally there, we have the grades of that school. Isn't that an interesting fact? So, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to analyze and interpret global graphs of problem situations with a special focus on the following trends and features. These are linear or nonlinear, constant, increasing or decreasing, maximum or minimum, and continuous or discrete. So that is what we are going to look at in today's lesson. Let's look at our concept map for today. So as we have mentioned, the focus of our lesson is interpreting graphs, and we are going to be looking at the topics of, well, the first one is going to be the linear or nonlinear. Then we are going to look at the constant, the increasing, and the decreasing. So that's when we are looking at our graphs. Next, we are going to go over to the maximum and the minimum. And then lastly, we are going to look at the discrete or the continuous data. Let's look at the keywords that we are going to be using during our lesson. So firstly, we are going to look at maximum. And that is the maximum point of a graph is the highest value vertically on a graph. And then the minimum point of a graph is the lowest value vertically on a graph. What about a linear graph? So a linear graph, that is a graph that is straight. This could be vertically straight, horizontally straight, or diagonally straight. So linear is a straight graph. What about nonlinear? Nonlinear, that is a graph that is not straight. So this could be a curve. Then we have constant. Now constant is a graph that is neither increasing nor decreasing. The vertical value remains the same throughout the graph. Then we are going to look at increasing graph. Then an increasing graph here refers to a graph where the vertical values are increasing as the horizontal values are also increasing. Then we're going to be looking at keywords such as decreasing graph. Now a decreasing graph, that is a graph that refers to a graph where the vertical values are decreasing as the horizontal values are increasing. Then we have discrete data. Discrete data is data that consists of quantities that can be counted. This data only consists of whole numbers. For example, the relationship between the number of cars bought each month is discrete because we cannot sell 3.5 cars. So we are talking here of quantities that can be counted. Continuous data, that is data that consists of quantities or variables that can include fractions. So for example, the price of sweets per kilogram, we know that those values, they can include fractions. Then lastly, we are going to look at trend, and that is a general direction in which something is developing or changing. So those are the keywords that we are going to be looking at during our lesson. Let's go over to the first concept of our concept map, and let's see what we can learn from that. Now remember, the first concept that we are going to look at is linear or nonlinear, and of course we are talking about graphs here. So linear means straight. Now this could be vertically straight, horizontally straight, or diagonally straight. Let's look at a few examples. So the first graph that we have been shown here, we can see there that we have our vertical axis, which is our y-axis, then we have our horizontal axis, which is our x-axis. Now when we look at the graph that we have been given there, we can see that the graph is vertically straight. So it is straight and it is also vertical, so that is a linear graph. The next one here that we have been given, of course, again, we have our vertical axis and our horizontal axis. And of course, we can see our graph there makes a straight line, which is now horizontal. So that line is also linear, or that graph is also linear, but it is horizontally straight. Then, of course, we have a diagonally straight. Again, we have our vertical axis and our horizontal axis. And then when we look at our graph there, it is a diagonal graph that has been given to us there. And of course, it can also be a diagonal in another way, so that is not the only diagonal that exists, but as we can see in the one that is shown here, it is also diagonal, where we have our vertical axis, we have our horizontal axis, and of course our graph there is placed diagonally. But all of these that are presented there, whether it's vertically or horizontally straight or diagonally straight, all of them, they are linear graphs. What about non-linear graphs? Let's look at what we can learn from there. Now, firstly, non-linear graphs, they refer to graphs that are not straight. So we've already looked at our straight graphs here. But now when we are talking about non-linear, we are talking about those graphs that are not straight. Now, this means that the graphs that can form a curve instead of a linear graph. So non-linear would mean that it is not straight, which means it is a curve. Let's look at some examples. So there's the first example of a non-linear graph. As we can see, it is clearly not a straight graph. We can see that it has a curve over there, which makes it non-linear because it is not straight. The following graph there that has been given is also a non-linear graph because it is not straight. As we can see there, it forms a curve, which we can clearly see it is not straight, which means it is a non-linear. Then lastly, we can see there as well, the one that we've been given there at the bottom, it is also not straight, it is forming a clear curve, so that is also another example of a non-linear graph. So any graph that is not straight would fall under the non-linear graphs. Let's quickly go to an ad break and then we'll see you just now.